Okay, for whatever reason, the well, it says we're connected. I think we're okay. So we're live now. Welcome. Okay, so Sean's not able to be here. He had a family medical emergency to attend to. So I'll go ahead and chair the meeting for this evening. I do believe we have enough people for a quorum, so that's good. Let's just go ahead and start with a vote to approve the October Community Tree Council meeting minutes and the October Community Tree Council committee meetings minutes.
Rodney, if this includes the work groups meeting minutes, you and I attended the interview meeting.
Yes. Did everybody get copies of those minutes? Did I send those out? Okay. Does anyone have any recommendations for corrections or changes? Okay, so I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to approve the October minutes.
I'll move that. Pam.
All in favor? Okay, the motion's passed unanimously. We'll move on to the motions that were passed last month. The CTC unanimously passed a motion to apply for the State Farm Community Grant. And it also made a motion to establish a grant writing work group, although although that work group the membership of that work group will still need to be filled. So I guess with that, one question I have is, do we have anybody who is willing to be a part of that work group?
I am. So I'm happy to share all the materials that I've used in the last handful of years to that work group. But since I'm stepping down after December, I mean, I can be on the work group for at least the next month, but we'll need additional people to fill that work group.
Okay, so we'll keep that in mind, and we may very well ask again for people who have an interest in that. There's also came up as part of the conversation to, ask the question to potential new members if they would be interested in serving on the grant writing work group. Do we have a treasurer's report, Pam?
Yes, I sent the paper, the electronic copy of the treasurer's report to the listserv earlier this afternoon. Not a lot of changes, as you might expect. We've got 20 cents of interest on the money market account. We wrote one check for $236 and some cents to cover some of the promotional material, the pictures and stickers and things like that. For education. And then we had our first donation into the new PayPal account. It was a $100 donation. And then of course, PayPal takes their percentage out of that. So the remainder is $96.80 into our PayPal account. And that's all there is.
Thank you, Pam. Let's go ahead.
Any questions? I don't hear any questions. That's good.
Thank you, Pam. Let's go ahead and move into the executive committee. Just part of the conversation, just to debrief everybody on that conversation. Mark Vichik is here, and he has an announcement for us. So as soon as he... Hey, Mark, can you hear us?
Sorry, the dogs keep trying to escape under the deck. Hey, I've taken a new position with the city of Covington. I will be their new planning and zoning manager. And so my time with Athens and with this board is coming to an end. I'll be here through Thanksgiving, but yeah, taking on any other work, and sorry to the education committee and the grants team. I am not able to continue any of that work for a while. So they really are excited about some of my tree stuff. And so I'm really thankful for this group and some of the things that Athens-Clarke County has been able to let me learn and grow. So I really appreciate that. And as I've told a bunch of people, my hope would be to be back in Athens one day in some capacity. So I hope you all keep doing great work. My wife and I will probably be moving over to the other side of Athens, probably outside of Clarke County, just to be a little bit in between here and Covington, but still plan to be involved heavily with the Athens community and things that are going on here. So would love to keep helping out. I'll certainly keep an eye on the CTC, and if I can provide some help, or if I can, get some help from you all, I'd love to stay in touch. So
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah, congratulations, Mark.
Congratulations, Mark. I really admired the work you do, and I've really enjoyed working with you. And I will miss you for sure. And I'm glad you're not moving too far away. It means we get to stay in touch.
Mark, you do realize if you move to the other side of town but stay in Clarke County, this would make you eligible as a full-fledged member of the CTC. Anytime, let us know.
Yeah, you might have to let people on from Oconee or Walton County, but yeah, we're still looking. We're just starting to look right now, but it'd be a hefty drive to be anywhere in Clarke County and make it down to Covington every day. So we're probably, unfortunately, looking a little bit further south and west. But if I do, I'd love to be a part of this. But
I understand. Congratulations to you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so I am both chairing the meeting and taking minutes, so please bear with me in this process. Let's just go ahead and move on to a discussion about, so this is our year-end meeting, and so there's some things we need to cover during this meeting. And let's just go ahead and start moving down through them. The first thing we need to consider is the president-elect for 2021. We really do need to pick someone as soon as possible so that they can participate as part of the executive committee. This was really important last year. When COVID hit, the executive committee was able to keep some things moving forward. They were able to vote to have this WebEx meeting and be able to make some changes as our world changed during that time. So do we have any thoughts about our next president-elect?
Do we have board elections, or does somebody need to make a motion from the floor to nominate someone?
Essentially, the tree council, the tree council can make a nomination and make a motion to elect somebody.
Has anybody expressed an intent to serve?
Not that I'm aware of.
I'm just going to throw out a nomination of Mary Attaway. If she doesn't want it, she can say no. But if she does, then at least somebody's up there.
I was going to nominate you.
I've been nominated to be the president of the Winterville Tree Council. So well, thanks. I can't do both.
I'll
I do
second.
not think it is my year. I seem to be juggling many balls in the air. It is something I am and would be interested in, but I hope that we can find someone that is willing to step up. Let's see.
But keep in mind that this is the chair-elect, so you wouldn't actually be the chair next year.
Oh,
You'd be
well,
the chair the
correct.
year
I
after
do
that.
know that. Yes, I know that. I can think about it, but let's keep thinking.
So according to our roster, the way it's broken down, 1/3 of our membership, they cycle out every 3 years. And we're kind of in a little bit of a restructuring, kind of getting that going again. And right now, the 3 members we have with terms expiring this year are Joe Perloff, Jesse McMillan, and Nina, who will not be with us this next year. So Joe and Jesse are the people who, according to the roster, have seniority, although Jesse's only also been with us for 1 year. Moving down from there, the next set of terms include Sean Doonan, who's our current president. So I don't believe, I mean, we could ask him, but I don't know if it would be tradition to have the same president serve 2 years in a row. Joe Bates, Mary Attaway, and Lee Clark. And then going down to the next set, that's is Phil and Pam. Phil's already served as the president.
I like being the treasurer just fine.
Yes. It would be then Edie and Mary Songster. Jim Wex has actually resigned, so he would not be in consideration.
Okay. So let's reach out to Jesse. I'm still unmuted, correct? Okay. And I will consider it. But I think Jesse would be an excellent candidate. I don't know how we feel about having, 3 people from the same business being presidents in a row. I know that's something, that we've talked about from time to time. It doesn't seem to be an issue at all, is from my perspective. I think they all bring great and different gifts to the table, but depending on how that looks, y'all let me know. And then Joe Bates.
Okay, so ideally we would vote to elect our president-elect during this year-end meeting. But I understand that you need some time to think about that. The sooner
Rodney, can I just give a little encouragement to those that might be thinking about it, but are maybe feeling a bit bashful? So this would mean that you wouldn't serve as president until a year from now.
Right.
And so you'd have a full year to sort of learn the ropes and be a part of the executive committee. And the other thing that I'll say is that this is very much a team effort. And so it's not like absolutely everything hinges on the president. Now, yes, there are some responsibilities that are really critical as president, but really this is a collective effort. And if you don't know everything yet, that's okay, because other people on the council will. So yeah, so any of the newer members that are feeling like you might want to consider, I hope that will encourage you.
Let me ask Joe Bates, if he's listening, if he has any interest in this. It looks like you're here.
Yeah,
Hey.
apologize. Hey.
Hey.
I would love to, but do not have the time right now. I wouldn't do it. The service it needs.
Okay. I like the idea that it's a year from now, and I would like the opportunity to gauge Jesse's interest as well before I put my name officially in the hat, since she's not here. I don't know how we can do that, though, if we need to make this decision today.
It doesn't have to be made today. It would be better if it were. The next time we'll have an opportunity to vote on it will be in January.
Mhm.
There will be a lot happening then, but we
I
can,
mean,
can
The
certainly.
issue with Jesse is probably the same. I mean, I feel like we're making such good headway on promotions, but considering the fact that we have a year to get that, going, she's going to have a lot on her plate with the maintenance of the website as it is. So I might be willing to take it. Yes, Phil.
This is out of order as far as the order in which we're taking things on the agenda, but I know traditionally we have a Christmas party instead of a meeting in December, but Rodney was talking about our next meeting will be in January. And I guess my question is, if we are not planning to have a face-to-face Christmas gathering, then is there a justification for having a meeting in December? And if so, we could deal with it then rather than the beginning of the year. It's just a thought.
Or Mary, could you just text Jessie and ask her right now? And then, we can move on to other things and then come back to this maybe.
Okay, I'll
Rodney,
gauge it.
can the minutes
I'm
reflect?
happy. Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Can the minutes reflect nominees, and that would allow us to vote in January if that has to be? I mean, if we have to wait on decision making a little bit, so then we can sort of officially nominate.
Mm-hmm. So let's tentatively move on, and we can maybe come back if we have time. Parking lot.
If you get a text back from Jesse, or if you make a decision, Mary, just jump in and let us know. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and plan on coming back to this topic in January with Mary and Jesse as the nominees. Okay. There was a meeting held between Joe Perloff and Sean and myself to help facilitate Joe's transition into being the next Tree Council president. It was a good meeting. Joe's excited to jump in, and he has some ideas for the coming year. So I think that's going to be very good. Look forward to working with Joe as the president. Okay, so we do need to consider some planning moving into 2021. There's actually 4 primary things that we need to consider. The first one is member nominations. Right now, the timeline, if we vote to nominate specific members in January, it is most likely going to be April before we're able to get our new members in. So into the future, ideally, we need to have members selected by September so that they can get into the mayor and commission agenda early enough to be voted on by the mayor and commission. So we'll keep that in mind. I did go ahead and start making an annual calendar for the tree councils to help us stay more organized about some of these time-sensitive matters. The annual report, I will talk with Sean about this, but the president is responsible for producing an annual report about the tree council's accomplishments for the year. So I'll also talk with Sean about that. The annual report is due in February. There are 2 events that the CTC is often involved with well, there's actually 3 events. The Green Life Expo, MLK Day of Service, and Arbor Day. So let's just kind of go in order. And does anyone have any thoughts or ideas about MLK Day?
Could we plant some trees?
Potentially, there would need to be, all the logistics would need to be set up for that. So the way that it ties into Martin Luther King Day of Service, planting locations, etc. Funding for the trees as well.
One thing, so what we did last year was we mulched the recent plantings at Broad Acres. And, you know, as we hopefully plant more trees in housing authority neighborhoods, it, you know, our planting event is typically Georgia Arbor Day, but we could use MLK Day to sort of mulch and maintain and sort, you know, check fencing and other things that we do. So I just thought I would throw that out there because it seemed like Broad Acres really needed attention last year in January.
That sounds good to me.
I think that's a great idea. And should we maybe, has anybody gone by Rock Springs? And we lost a lot there, right? Several shrubs and a couple of trees. And what is do we replace what we lost?
We didn't replace, oh, sorry, Phil, were you gonna?
I was just gonna say, I haven't been and checked at Rock Springs in some time, but I was by Broad Acres recently, and there's need for some pruning, particularly of the red buds, that are the multi-stemmed red buds. They're very bushed out with a lot of extra stems at the base, and I'm sure that the mulching and so forth could be done again. I'm sure that there's need for that at both sites. Rock Springs, I'm certain, needs some replanting. I just haven't gone and taken a head count recently.
What does our budget allow?
What budget?
To my knowledge, the only tree planting funds that we have dedicated right now are for the Firefly. And,
yeah.
And those are obligated, of course, for that location. It may be, it could be that Danny and the other housing authority folks might have some end of year funds that they could help with some replanting expenses at Rock Springs. I don't know. Someone would need to approach Danny about that.
Danny recently emailed us to notify us that there were some trees that needed replacing at Rock Springs. But I mean, we could wait and see what happens with the state farm grant that I just submitted a few weeks ago, because there would be funding there to replace and then of course plant more at Broad Acres. And yeah, if we hear back, you know, by the end of the year, I think there would be enough time to sort of plan ahead for MLK Day and for Georgia Arbor Day. But it doesn't hurt to ask if, you know, AHA is willing to buy mulch or replacement trees for MLK Day specifically.
Let's see if we can drum up some income in the next month. I mean, that's a possibility. You know, we'll get to promotions soon enough, but.
So for me, like logistically, how do you sort out the responsibilities for these activities? Like who should follow up on talking to Danny, or who should follow up on materials or sites, or I mean, I think we could probably all agree that maintenance or mulching would be great, and planting if it's possible, but what is the next step? How do we get it done?
Well, in the past, we just make a commitment to do it. Sean has donated mulch every time. And then we have worked with Stacy Farrell to get tools. And I think, I feel like it was Rodney, Nina, and Phil maybe, but that sort of organized that. And I've done that through Chase Street Plantings, but somebody just sort of says, you know, we'll organize it. We would need a commitment from Sean to say that he would supply us with mulch, which is probably the first step that needs to happen. So we need to follow up directly with him. And if we can get the mulch, everything else just falls into place. I'll volunteer to go by Rock Springs, and I'm curious about what it looks like over there anyway.
So I really like the idea of doing maintenance as part of Martin Luther King Day. I think that's wonderful. It helps us to emphasize the importance of tree maintenance, and it's something we can just show up and do some stuff. We don't even really have to have a budget necessarily. We could do some pruning and, tidying up and assessing the site, and it gives us a direction to move towards. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I agree.
I will say that many boards that I know of encourage donations from their members. So if you feel inclined, you can always donate to the tree council, and we can use that towards trees for planting. But that's completely up to you.
Has there ever been a gathering on your end, Rodney? I know you've done a lot of stuff data-wise, but I've always thought that the MLK Day of Service offered an interesting opportunity to get people out there with, iPads doing some monitoring and some ongoing maintenance, looking at some of those things. It seems like there could be an opportunity. I know we've never really had much of this stuff mapped. I mean, there's, GIS folks at the county and then GIS folks at the university that are doing a lot of these things. So I've just always kind of wondered, because we do have this question of ongoing maintenance, and I've seen it with other groups that are volunteer, to kind of keep that energy going, to have some of that data and have some of that mapping to back it up. I always kind of thought some of the tree stuff could use a little bit of that help too.
Yeah, definitely, Mark. That's a great idea. The Broad Acres trees are all mapped, and the trees that were planted for Arbor Day last year are all mapped. They're now technically landmark trees because they were planted as part of Arbor Day. But we have not mapped the trees at Rock Springs, so there could be an opportunity with that. Okay, so that gives us some things to think about. I'll make sure that this item is on the agenda. It'll be one of the first things we talk about in January. It'll be a quick organization, and implementation. Green Life Expo. So I know Mark kind of headed up Green Life Expo last year. Any thoughts about that? Happens in February, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I've sat at the table before, and I think Phil has as well. It's a pretty small time commitment. You just have to sit at the table and talk to people about trees. So I think it'd be a good thing to continue.
It's likely that we will have more up-to-date promotional materials this year as well. Well, not likely. It's possible that we may, and it's a good time to give out those sorts of things and increase the awareness of the Community Tree Council. We've also relied on Stacy and KACCB in the past to furnish us with some seedlings, and several other organizations last year furnished us with some seedlings to give out as well. That's always been a very popular thing, and it gets people to the table and gives us a chance to talk to them about all sorts of tree planting and tree maintenance activities.
Yeah, I haven't officially heard if they're changing anything because of COVID stuff, but I can follow up with all the still going on. And one other thing,
That's true. That would be a big issue.
Yeah, one other thing we had talked about, it might have just been between Rodney and I thought I brought it up at one of the CTC meetings, is that at the Green Life Expo, they also give out the awards to potentially give out an award to a steward or business doing something really good for trees. I had a few suggestions last year. I'd be happy to send those to Rodney. I'm sure Rodney knows, and I'm sure some of the other folks here know some people that would be worthy of such a thing. So I think last year I brought it up a little bit too late, like in January, but I think that would be kind of a neat thing. And it's usually just a 2-minute talk and a small gift of some sort or another, and some recognition, obviously, within the community.
That sounds great. So essentially, this involves setting up a table, talking to people about trees, giving out promotional materials, and maybe trees if we're able to find some seedlings. With one of the most important components being the tree award. So do we have someone who would like to take responsibility for, making sure someone is nominated for the tree award, and then providing something for that, for whoever that award's given out to?
I will. If nobody else wants to do it, I'll do it.
That'd be great. Thank you, Lee.
I have a standing commitment with the 100% Athens group for the Green Life Expo, or else I would totally table for you guys. But I already know I've committed for 100% Athens Renewable Energy Initiative. So
Yeah, I'm happy to help with that if they do have tables. I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
I do want to, Ronnie, I do want to share that that Keep Athens-Clarke County Beautiful will be doing the Bring One for the Chipper Christmas Tree Recycling Program, where we do exchange a Christmas tree for a tree seedling. And so, as always, we're happy to pass those on to the Community Tree Council. We don't know what varieties we'll have quite yet, and we don't ever really know the exact number. It depends on how many people participate. But like I said, in the past, we've always passed those on to the Community Tree Council, and we're happy to do that again.
Awesome, Stacy. Thank you. I think those seedlings are really popular, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so this will also be on the agenda for January and February. So let's move on and talk about Arbor Day. Now, I did have a couple different thoughts about Arbor Day. One could involve a standard tree planting ceremony, similar to the way things have been done in the past. The other thought I had involves, where things are with the COVID pandemic, and how much it makes sense to have an in-person gathering. And just kind of thinking out loud, I was just wondering if some sort of online presentation, some sort of Arbor Day presentation, some sort of educational piece about trees, maybe the history of trees in Athens or something to that effect could be an alternative possibility. Anyone have any thoughts?
Rodney, in the past, we've also done like a poetry contest or a photography contest to engage students in some thoughtful, artistic renderings of trees. So that's always an option too, because they can do that independently.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Stacy. That's great. We need to unmute you, Phil.
Again, I don't know how the pandemic will play into this, but and we'll talk about it a little more later in the meeting. But we still are hopeful that we'll be planting a number of trees on the Firefly there at the interface between Phase 1 and Phase 2 on Lexington Highway. And if it works out, that's always a good time to do that. To do that tree planting as we did this past year on Arbor Day. It's outside and we can socially distance to some extent in a setting like that. It would just depend on the severity of the situation locally, I suppose, at the time.
Okay. And
well, one thing I wanted to mention is that the State Farm community grant that I submitted a couple weeks ago, I provided two possible timelines. One was if we got word that we got funding before the end of the year, that we would plan to have our Arbor Day celebration at Broad Acres or another AHA neighborhood and plant trees. And then I provided an alternative timeline where if we got word that we got funding, in the middle of January, that may not provide us with enough time to get everything assembled and, the site prepped and everything delivered. So I suggested that it would be then the next year. So that's something to keep in mind, because I think that State Farm would appreciate, community engagement. And a big part of the application was commenting on how we bring in volunteers, but we also bring in community members for whatever community is that is being enhanced by the grant. So that's something to keep in mind. But the Firefly seems like a good backup.
Well, yeah, backup would be a good way to look at it, perhaps, because we have the money for that, and hopefully we get our act together. We will have trees available, and they will be planted, whether they're done in a public setting, during a presentation type program, or otherwise. We'll still get them in the ground. So if State Farm comes through, that would be good for them and good for us.
Great. So these are all excellent ideas. I really appreciate the wide range of possibilities with this. We can continue to talk about the Firefly Trail trees. Phil, we have had some conversations about that. We're waiting to hear back from Todd Miller about some details. But we can talk about that a little bit later on, either later on during this meeting or moving on into the future.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to, Sean asked me if I'd be willing to present an educational short during this meeting. He asked me to talk about the topic of the iTree Echo Study. I'm happy to do that. I put together a PowerPoint presentation. It's 18 slides long. I think it'll take me 15 minutes to deliver it. Is everybody okay with that?
Sure.
It is a little bit complex. So what I'm going to ask you to do, if you have questions, write them down and ask them at the end of the presentation. It starts out very easy, but it at some point becomes overwhelming. So it's intended as an overview, is kind of a framework for sort of basically how I would like to move forward during my time here with Athens-Clarke County. So let me go ahead and start this up. Share the screen. Oop. Guess I better share the screen first. Okay, are you all able to see a screen that says Framework for Urban and Community Forest Management? Okay, so I'm just going to start by talking, kind of picking up where Sean left off last month when he talked about the difference between forest-grown trees and open-grown trees. So Sean had a lot of great points about that. Essentially, and this is really important when it comes to tree management, it's really a fundamental in the difference between, it's fundamental in how we manage urban trees. So a forest-grown tree, when it's growing among other trees and they're competing for sunlight and for space, they have a tendency to grow very tall and very straight. The canopy breaks out much higher in the air, and they're usually single stemmed. When you have an open grown tree that has been cultivated in the nursery and then planted in the urban environment, we tend to get these very broad trees. The branches develop very low on the trunk, the canopy spreads wide, and the tree is often wider than it is tall. And what happens, because we have these lower branches on the tree, we have a few things that happen. But this branching structures also often you have these multiple branches coming out of the single spot on the tree, which causes a lot of problems. As the tree ages, these lower branches tend to get pruned off, but usually not until they're very large. And then we have large pruning wounds. These large pruning wounds then introduce decay into the tree system. These open-grown trees planted in the urban environment are really subject to developing tree defects. And the most common tree defects we see in these open-grown trees are codominant unions with included bark, which gives us failure profiles that look like this. Another thing that we see are these trees that have multiple branches originating from the same point on the stem. This is a defect. These branches are highly prone to failure, and they're prone to introducing decay into the tree. They're often a result of the way trees are cultivated in the nursery. A lot of times they'll head them off so that the tree branches out and looks prettier, and it's easier for them to sell. Because of this, urban-grown trees really do require maintenance in order to be able to have a longer lifespan and to minimize the amount of issues that they might cause over time. So on the left here, we have a series of pictures during a picture when the tree was planted, a picture when the tree is 4 years old, and a picture when the tree is 15 years old. This is what they will do if left to themselves. So you get multiple leaders, you get codominant unions, you get narrow unions, you get a lot of competition that causes branch and twig death. Trees, in order to be highly functional in an open-grown setting, really need what we call structural pruning. So on this picture here, we show a tree newly planted from the nursery. And this is one where the tree planter actually does a little bit of pruning as they plant the tree. A tree that is structurally pruned at 4 years, and then a tree that has been structurally pruned at 15 years. The primary difference here is that the trees that are structurally pruned have been pruned so that they have a dominant central leader and even branch spacing, both vertically and radially around the tree. When a tree is pruned like this, the tree is much less susceptible to wind loads and ice loads and rain loads. So they're structurally, they have a lot more structural integrity. This one thing is by far the most cost-effective thing that you can do to increase the life expectancy of the trees that get planted, and also to reduce the risks and the cost that tree will incur over its lifespan. So one thing that's important to think about with trees, you can't just plant them in the ground and expect them to grow and be highly functional. They really do need to be cared for and maintained. By doing this, we can reduce costs and risks, and also save money over time. To do this only takes about 15 minutes to a half hour for each tree at the 4 and 15 year time frame. So just to define arboriculture and to point out the difference between arboriculture and urban forestry. Arboriculture is the art and science of selecting and managing trees. And arborists manage these trees intensively. So in other words, an arborist is going to pay very close, particular attention to each and every single individual in order to produce safe, healthy, and attractive trees. Urban forestry is the management of trees for their contribution to the psychological, sociological, and economic well-being of an urban society. So this is the art, science, and technology of managing trees, forests, and natural systems in and around cities, suburbs, and towns for the purpose of improving the health and well-being of people. So this definition of urban forestry, this is the USDA definition. This is policy, planning, and management of trees in forests and urban areas to sustain the natural and urban human environments. And one key difference between tree management from an arborist perspective and tree management from a forester's perspective is that a forest will manage trees extensively. So in other words, a forester is going to be managing trees within a certain geographic area. They're going to be managing many trees simultaneously. The goals of urban forestry is to maximize tree benefits, minimize costs, and minimize risks. And here's a picture of the structural pruning, and I put that on here because this is the best way that we can achieve those goals. It's not the only way, but it's the most cost-effective way. So trees produce a wide range of benefits. They save energy, they mitigate pollution, they have aesthetic value, they produce stormwater runoff reduction, and they have psychological and health benefits. So urban forestry involves arboriculture, but it also involves planning and coordination. And most importantly, urban forestry involves partnerships. This is partnerships with federal, state, and private sectors and organizations. And essentially, this is the urban forest management paradigm, and it's basically the production of a plan, a strategic management plan that answers these 4 questions. What do we have? What do we want? How do we get what we want? And are we getting what we want? So the first question, what do we have? This is assessing the urban forest. So Athens-Clarke County has a pretty good tree inventory going. It isn't a complete inventory, but it's a very useful tool for the management of trees, especially from a risk management perspective. The other thing that we can do to gather information on the forest is to conduct a statistical analysis. So I was able to write a grant to the Georgia Forestry Commission requesting matching funds grant for an iTree eco study. And that has been approved, and this iTree eco study is now underway. The other thing we do in asking what we have is assessing community members and stakeholders' knowledge, attitudes, behaviors, and needs. And then we also identify the factors that influence the urban forest, including the environmental, the public, and the private factors. Okay, so this is where it starts to get kind of complex. In the next couple slides. The second question, as far as a strategic management plan, is really just asking what we want. And this is just analyzing and evaluating the information, having conversations with stakeholders and community members to create a management vision and a management goal. So we really need to know what it is that we want so that we know what direction to move in. Okay, so this is where it gets a little more complex. So how do we get what we want? we create a strategic management plan. And this plan may include things like tree planting and maintenance, tree removal. And certainly within Athens-Clarke County, all three of these things are paramount and very, very important. We have trees here, we have to deal with them. That's just the reality. The other thing, and I made it in larger font, is to promote species diversity and diverse age structures. This really has to do with the resiliency of the trees that are out there, but also understanding the natural progression of the species within the urban forest, within that geographic area. We can also educate stakeholders, and we can manage other factors that influence the urban forest. So planting, preservation, maintenance, removal, risk management, operations. We're also thinking about the physical environment as a whole. So the human factors, you know, how much pollution are we putting out there? How much are invasive plants spreading around? What types of invasive pests are coming in? These sorts of things. We also need to think about the institutional and commercial organizations within the community. So this means working with businesses and government, the green industry, and other agents of change to advance the plan toward being able to meet our goals. We also need to think about the political and legal environment, the regulations of the tree ordinance, liability, politics, competition, and citizen support. Arboriculture, policy, planning, and decision-making are all critical components of managing the factors that influence the urban forest. All right, and then finally we ask, are we getting what we want? And this is just really a reassessment and a check-in to see how things are going and are we meeting benchmarks. So this basically introduces accountability into the process. It also allows for readjustments and adaptive management. So we don't have to come up with all the answers at once. We can make changes as we go. All right, so to come to the iTree Eco Study, there are 4 primary goals. The first one is to engage in partnerships. So this study involves a partnership between Athens-Clarke County, University of Georgia, the Georgia Forestry Commission, and community groups, most specifically the Community Tree Council. We want to generate peer-reviewed scientific data and analysis of both public and private trees on a county-wide scale. This gives us a much better idea of what we have and what we're looking at moving into the future. We want to really assess what the functions of the urban forest is. So trees and forests aren't necessarily assets. A hazard tree is a liability. A forest that is full of invasive trees or trees that are about ready to die out could be a liability. So we want to assess and see what the function of the urban forest is. We'll gather information which will help and inform and guide policy changes. So this is specifically to the tree management ordinance. But the ordinance really guides how the community decides to manage the urban forest from a private perspective. So this has to do with permitting, rules, regulation, that sort of thing. The other thing is to develop credible information so that we can have an informed development of an urban and community forest strategic management plan. These strategic management plans are usually set up for 20 years, and then they're divided into 5-year tactical plans and 1-year work plans. The goal of an urban forest Urban Community Forest Strategic Management Plan is to increase the community forest benefits and to decrease tree-related risks and costs over time. This is the second to the last slide. So this is the timeline for the iTree Echo study. So if you take a look here, the planning process is going on right now and will continue through April. Phase 2, which is the assembly of the data collection teams, will begin in March. Dr. Gordon at UGA will be responsible for this. UGA will be serving as a contractor for Athens-Clarke County to collect the data for the iTree Echo study. Phase 3 will occur May through August, and this is really the collection of the data itself. Phase 4 is the generation of reports. Dr. Gordon will generate the initial reports. And then the last phase, which will occur next October, is to present some of the analyses. And the Community Tree Council has agreed to present some of the findings next October. All right, so that, I'm not going to go through every one of these, but basically this study creates the ability to assess areas of lands according to categories. So the main categories are, so we can dig down and see how things are going according to land use categories. So we'll be looking at single family residential, multifamily residential, small commercial, industrial, government-owned lands, and privately owned agriculture and natural lands. So this is kind of the direction that's all moving in. And with that, I'm going to end the show and excuse me, if I can figure out how to do this. Here we go. Ask if anybody has any questions.
That was great, Rodney. Thank you.
Go ahead, Joe.
So how frequently do you need to structurally prune? Is it on the 4-year and the 15-year mark, or is it more frequent?
Rodney, you're muted.
Thank you. That's a great question, Joe, and I appreciate it. So the answer is you would prune them more frequently than that, ideally. But if you have limited budgets, pruning at the 4-year mark and the 15 mark are by far the most cost-effective things you can do to extend the life of a tree, its structural integrity, and its service life. So, and its functionality. So 4 and 15 are kind of critical. But if you're, my trees, I'm gonna structural prune them at 4 years, at 15 years, at 25 years, and probably at 35 years, and maybe even more than that. So it really is a question of how much budget do you have to apply toward the trees.
With that in mind, Rodney, you said it was a fairly quick process per tree, but we're talking about a lot of trees. So what do you anticipate that percentage of the budget? Do you have any anticipation of the numbers for that kind of maintenance?
I have none at all. We tried to do some structural pruning, but the scope and scale on a countywide level, it's not possible to prune all the trees that are planted. So, I mean, this is an ideal scenario, and this is why we want a strategic plan so that we have goals and visions, and then we can reassess and see how it's going. So we do have the reality of budgets, and we have to work within those budgets, and we need to prioritize, so some areas may have higher priority than others. The county-owned trees get more work because they have more dedicated crews. The park trees get more work. The right-of-way trees, there's 768 miles of roadways in this county, and so obviously they're not getting as much.
Can I jump in real quick, Rodney?
Yes.
So this is Andrew Saunders with Central Services, and used to be the forester. To give you some context, just on publicly owned trees, so trees along the streets, roads, or parks, facilities, we're under $1 per tree. I would maybe $1.50 per tree per year across our total known inventory. And that doesn't include our woodland areas or our forested areas. Those are just individually inventoried trees. So when you figure that a removal, if it's contracted out, can go anywhere from $500 to thousands of dollars, every time we have to make that action, we end up not being able to deliver care, especially in that preventive range, to other trees. And it's something we're working on, but it also is hard to get decision makers focused on that, especially when they can be overwhelmed by the scale. And so I'm hopeful that this study will help to quantify kind of service delivery levels for both public and private trees.
Thank you, Andrew. Yes, it really, I mean, there's a lot of realities when it comes to the resources available and what needs to be done. The inventory we have is only a fraction of the trees out there. There's 35,000 trees on that inventory, but there are hundreds of thousands of trees along the right of way. So we don't even know how many trees there are, really, and that's why this iTree Echo Study is going to help. Any other questions? Okay, let's go ahead and move on. We're running out of time pretty quickly, so we'll just go through the best we can. I am leaning in the direction of ending the meeting at 4:30, unless people really want to stay longer than that. So let's move on to the interview work committee. I'm sorry, the interview work group meeting. And so we need to renew 3 new members, Joe Perloff, Jesse, and Tori. And we also now need to find 3 more members to nominate for membership. Sean does have some ideas about some people who are interested in becoming CTC members. So we'll hopefully have people interviewed and ready to be voted on to be accepted for nomination by the CTC in January. Okay, trees for tomorrow. Do you have anything for us, Phil?
Ronnie, can I just add that you've given me the interview questions, but I have not had a chance to look at them yet, and I'll be doing that by the end of the month.
Rodney, can you hear me? Okay. I don't know if it's appropriate. If it is, I would like to get our Trees for Tomorrow work group embedded into the committee meetings agenda for this coming Monday. I'm going to be sending some information out to our work group members, a rough sketch of the available space that we know we have that we could plant in. It sounds like you may have some more information that I don't have at this point, but my plan was to get some information out to our folks and have a brief meeting with them during our Zoom committee meetings next Monday to talk about selection of species and numbers.
I will definitely make sure you're on the agenda. Just to give you a heads up, in our conversations, there is Winterville Highway, and where the boulders are, next to that old abandoned section of road, because we really don't have any understanding of what the future development of that site's going to look like. We know that GDOT's coming in, and the suggestion has been to wait on the planting of the trees along those areas to see until we know better what's going on. We really don't want to plant trees that could be beat up during the construction process. My thinking was those boulders could offer some protection, but somebody reminded me that, you get a construction company in there doing heavy work, they can move those boulders like nothing. So it's really not much of a protection. You're muted, Phil.
I went back over to the site that we had our field trip at and just looked along the side closest to the Lexington Highway of the edge of the trail, and tried to stay away from that area right out near Old Winterville Road, and from there down to the intersection with Lexington Highway. That all seemed to be in flux, and that was the information that I got before we left that day. So what I'm looking at are just, and I've stepped off some distances and some widths that I feel like we could safely, that's within the right of way of the trail itself, and that we could safely plan on. And that's what I thought might be wisest to look at for this year's effort. Certainly it won't be, we were looking at one point of trying to plan out everything that we had budget for and get it done right there, but certainly it will not be enough to plant that many. But if we could get onto the agenda, that'll give us a chance to talk among ourselves a little and get that moving, perhaps.
We'll definitely get it on the agenda, and maybe we'll have some answers by this next Monday, some more specifics.
Okay.
Okay.
Other than that, I that's all I have from TFT.
Great. Thank you, Phil. Let's go ahead and move into our work group or our committee meetings. The promotions committee, we didn't get anything into the agenda. Is there anything that that needs to be talked about from the promotions committee?
Yes, my apologies to that. I made a Google document and reviewed it with Jesse and mentally checked it off that I'd shared it with Sean, and just really thought that I'd gotten that to him. So I did not realize that, but I have emailed everybody the items that were on that. So you should have that under our agenda. Quickly, I'd like to say that while we have been sitting here, I have posted a link to Facebook and Instagram for the position for the council. And in case any of you do not know, if you get on the Athens-Clarke County website and look for the Community Tree Council, the application is on there. You probably all know that because you went through the process. But it's very easy to share in an email or on your Facebook page, and that's another way for us to drum up some more interest and maybe get some more applications in. I have shared it with a couple of people that I thought might be interested. I think I told you one is serving on the library board and she wants to wait to roll off of that. And then the other person, it's not a good time for her. So hopefully we'll get some feedback from social media on that. And that was really, and I went ahead and emailed you all a copy of a letter that we worked on, that I sort of wrote and shared it for some feedback. And it's, I'm open to more edits you can edit it as you wish, but it's a way for you all to reach out to people or organizations you know personally and let them know about our website and about our donation levels and the fact that they can donate online on the PayPal link. And I'll also, Rodney, I put you on that letter as the point person and gave an address there to have checks mailed. I don't see any reason why we can't go ahead and get this started. The website is active. It is not perfect, but there is a lot of information on it for people to look at and some good pictures and a PayPal link. So I think those are the most important things. And we are hoping to flush out the chart that Tori put together for us for the past projects, which I mentioned in that letter. So we're really going to push hard and see if we can drum up some money before the end of the year. So we're all motivated to do that. But I would like to ask you all to use that letter and change it and just try to start getting the word out that we are seriously trying to make some money. And we can talk about this more next week, but we would like to renew the conversation about having a page on the website for the champion trees. And I believe that the Forest Commission has a page on that already, and I don't know how old it is, but I was thinking that another one of our social media posts could be for people to look into that if they think they may have a county champion on their property, to check and see if it is on there, or to see if they wanted to have somebody come and check. And Rodney, maybe I'll email you, or you can tell me what the process would be, what that would look like. I don't know who would go out and measure the tree or how that would really work.
So yes, there is a champion tree program. In the past, there was a gentleman at the CTC who kind of ran that whole thing. I have a protected trees layer that includes all the landmark trees. It will include the champion trees once they've been listed. And they also include the Millage Avenue Historic District trees. The champion trees have not been mapped. I have paper files. There are about 135 of them. Before we roll out the champion tree program, I would really like to get an on-ground assessment to see which trees are still there, and see where the champion trees are at. Because if some of those trees have been removed, there are no current champions within that species. So we have, however many species on the ACC tree species list, there should be a champion for each one of those. There are a couple state champion trees included, and there is one national champion tree included. So it's a great program. I'd love to see it get up to speed and up and running. The process for a landmark tree basically is somebody will nominate the tree. The forester is responsible for approving that tree, so that means the forester has to go look at it. Champion trees involve another layer. There's an evaluation process to score a champion tree. I have a document, it's 100 and some pages long on how to do that, but I quite honestly just have not had time to learn how to score champion trees, let alone go out there and look at these. So if there's some CTC members who would be interested in doing this, we would love to have your help.
Okay, well, I'll talk to some of the absent members and see. I know that was something Sean was really, really interested in. So, okay, I know we're moving along. And we have those stickers that we were going to use as part of a thank you note for donations at a certain level, but I'll be mailing each of our members a nice little Athens Tree Council logo sticker that you can put on a water bottle or your car to start the promotions process officially. That's all I have.
Great. Thank you, Mary. The policy committee.
That's me. This will be quick. For the developing relationship with the archivist, nothing has happened. Had the presidential election and I have 2 runoffs, so that's taken up some of that time. And working towards creating an annual request from the general funds of the mayor and commission. I'm still trying to get information on like how other groups have done that and try to develop a general language and idea. So really not much has happened there. That's still ongoing. And the third bullet, what I'm calling the tree fund, is beginning moving away from, in the process of moving away from the idea of the tree ordinance establishing new parameters on private trees, plantings, or when development happens, to a tree bank, and then in finding out that a tree bank is probably not workable as a concept. And I've been learning a lot about language and a lot about the terminology, which I still don't use all accurately, and I'm getting better. And Mark and I were going to meet and talk about using kind of developing a capture of from planning where the potential development that has when you would potentially get a waiver for planting. So not allowing for a waiver, not allowing for a pay instead of plant, but when it would happen, to capture a fee at that point that would go into a tree fund. And it does seem like after Rodney's presentation, there may be some good opportunity to begin to create a tree pool for Athens, and then we would have trees that we could grow and prune how we would like for our management, just as an additional resource, not necessarily replacing any resources that we already use to get trees, but building in more resiliency. So that language is really something I'm going to have to work with planning, and Lee and Joe and I have been looking at other areas and how they do that. And so that will be ongoing. And the other thing was asking for an annual amount from the general fund, wanting to make sure that didn't inhibit, like if we got monies, it didn't inhibit anything traditionally that the CTC has done or in the future would be allowed to do, like the monies wouldn't restrict. And so I'm still looking into that. I haven't found anything that's restrictive, but I've just started looking. So I'll have more to report hopefully next month. And that's it for policy.
Thank you, Mary. Do we have any input from the education committee?
Nothing new from education, but while I'm here, and since Mary was just mentioning it, I started a conversation with Rodney and Andrew Saunders and the finance department about a budget. I'm not sure if that has all been shared with you, Mary, but I will. Okay. Yeah, I'll make sure that to kind of start wrapping that discussion up with Andrew and Rodney, because Andrew was able to provide a bunch of helpful pieces. I think they want it to come through central services as opposed to having its own independent budget the way some other boards and advisory committees have. But let me just wrap that up with them, and then I'll definitely get that to you, Mary. And in terms of the tree bank, you mentioned Joseph, but he's been one from the private side who's told me about other tree bank work. So I would say keep working with him. Just to actually wrap up education, I would love to meet for a few minutes on Monday just to go over some of the things we've done already, and then hopefully get someone else to sort of start to take the lead on that as you guys go forward. So that's all from education.
Thank you, Mark. That sounds good. I also have had a couple conversations about possibility for a CTC budget, and I think it would be very good if you and I, Mark, if we talked about it a little bit as well. There's nuances to it. It can become quite complex. But we'll follow up in the meeting at the policy committee with that. Okay, fundraising. Do we have any discussions that need to occur about fundraising for the CTC?
I've been doing a little bit of research on grants, but I haven't, and I've shared a couple with Nina, but nothing has come of that so much. But we are continuing to look for other funding sources. I haven't even read the timelines, but they look like they could be good matches. So we have some things to talk about in that regard. I think I shared everything else through the promotions agenda that I have.
I think it's super exciting that the PayPal account is now active on the webpage. Great work to everybody who made that happen. I know that was not easy. That's fantastic. So, in continuing that conversation about, members have donated in the past, word of mouth is great advertising. So talk to your friends. We need support, so let's get out there and start mustering that support up. That's awesome. It's a great tool. I can't wait to see how it works out.
One question, if I may, Nina, when will we know something regarding the State Farm? Is that open-ended entirely?
Yeah, it's pretty non-specific.
Okay.
So they say that you could hear as soon as you apply to like March. So
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other thoughts or comments about fundraising at this point? Okay, do we have any thoughts or questions overall before we end the meeting?
I have one. I did hear from Jesse about being the future president. She is a little worried about having 3 enough presidents in a row. And she thinks that this forum would not be ideal for her. She would rather be a president when she knows that she could meet in person. Those were her comments. So I am willing to take that role for the future.
Awesome.
Just needed a little push.
So with that, do you want to make the motion, Nina, or who wants to make the motion?
I move that we elect Mary Attaway as the Community Tree Council president-elect.
I second.
President-elect for 2021.
All in favor? All right, moved unanimously. Congratulations, Mary, and thank you.
Mary.
Thank you, Mary.
Hey, Rodney, I had a quick thing. Congratulations, Mary, by the way. I'm looking at our Facebook page, the Athens Community Tree Council, and the website listed as our official website, athenstrees.com, is returning a server IP address error.
That's our old one.
That's a thank you for bringing that up, Russell. Yeah. I will call public information and make sure we get connected to the right link. I'll do that this week.
And this is on our Facebook page.
Oh, on the Facebook page.
Yeah, that's something that we missed. So I'll change that here. I think I can do it.
Then the email address to information@AthensTrees.
Yeah.
So what is our web address now?
I need to look it up in my other notebook. It's a Gmail account. And I could guess, but I'll probably get it wrong, but I can email it to you all.
Okay.
I think that journal's in the car. But yeah,
The
I
web- what's the new-
I can change the website now. Sorry.
Yeah, he was asking what the website was.
Oh, I thought you said, what is the email address? The website is Athens Tree Council. Athens Community Tree Council. Nope, sorry. Oh gosh. Here it is. AthensTreeCouncil.com.
Okay.
It's in the chat box now.
You got it? Let's check it. Athens.
There
Is
it
that
is.
working?
Yeah, it kind of works.
TreeCouncil.com. Okay.
That's the one that PayPal is linked to that.
Yeah. Okay, I'll work on changing the website on Facebook. Thank you for that. I put the link in the bio for the county website on Instagram because that's the one that has the application, the formal application. So I just did a post that says one of those Lincoln, I've never done a LinkedIn bio post, but I just, so somebody can check that on their mobile device and make sure that that takes you to, that should be acc.gov, and then this council, which has the application. But once we get past that post and we get some applications in, I'll put it back on our regular website address. Does that make sense?
Sounds good. And I will double check and make sure the link's working through the ACC Tree Council page as well. All right, with that, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
I second. Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Nice to see you. You have a good evening.
Thank you, Rodney.
Thank you, Rodney.